Hello, and welcome to another episode of Chuchu Reviews, the show where I take 4 random, unrelated albums and I stick them in a blender, and then I review them, I rate them, and I rank them. Simplicity achieved. 3 of the records this week were pulled from the comments, so if you have an album you'd like to see featured, why not drop a nomination, and who knows, you might just get lucky. So, let's introduce this episode's combatants in alphabetical order. Firstly, we have Foxhead Stalk This Land by Close Lobster from 1987, which was nominated by Stee. Next we have Torpedo by Feeder from 2022, which is my own personal pick for inclusion. Then we have Costello Music by the Fratellis from 2006, which was nominated by Gibbon56. Finally, we have Number 4 by Stone Temple Pilots from 1999, which was nominated by Tailtube. So, now the battle lines have been drawn, let's be complete rankers and rank up a storm. This is Chuchu Reviews. Coming in last place this week, we have Torpedo by Feeder, which was the band's 11th LP from 2022. And this album was inspired by the COVID pandemic, with the band scrapping previously written songs in order to capture the dark spirit of the lockdown era. And this does sound like an interesting idea, at least until you remember that Feeder aren't really a band that you turn to for lyrical insight. Well, maybe that's a little uncharitable. Grant Nicholas, bless his cotton socks, does have his occasional moments. None of them are on this, but he does have a few of them elsewhere. But there definitely is a darker atmosphere brewing here. This is still sonically one of Feeder's darkest records. The soundscapes have a grimy, heavy rock feel, with a side order of hazy swamp rock psychedelia. It's the closest Feeder have ever sounded to the likes of Alice in Chains or Stone Temple Pilots, the latter of which coincidentally is also featured on this episode. But I don't think that kind of dangerous sounding nasty rock really suits Feeder, who are, by their nature, probably the least dangerous rock band out there. I mean, Feeder's version of high octane danger is probably forgetting to wear house slippers while going to the bathroom in the middle of the night. I just don't really buy that snarling, moody darkness that the band are going for here. It feels inauthentic and contrived, especially as a lot of the lyrics tend to revolve around the kind of "don't lose hope, things will get better, don't stop believing" type of syrupy bullshit. So yeah, the lyrics do kind of suck, but at least the band can always fall back on rocking out, which is definitely something they do here. As not only is Torpedo one of Feeder's darkest records, but it's also one of their outright heaviest, employing a lot of metal riffage and thunderous distortion. But of course, just being heavy in itself does not add up to immediate success, and Feeder just haven't supported that heaviness with enough melody or catchiness here. When I think of Feeder, the first things I think about are huge catchy sing-along choruses. But this LP is pretty bereft in that department. I mean, sure, it's probably by design, as I said, the band are aiming for that whole kind of grinding Alice in Chains thing, but it's not a good look for the band, and makes a large portion of this material feel utterly unmemorable. I mean, I've listened to this LP like 5 times and I still can't remember a single track off the second side of it. Mercifully though, there are a couple of decent songs on the opening half. The Healing nicely straddles the line between stadium rock ballad and gurning metal tune. Title track Torpedo gets the off-kelter Alice in Chains heaviness thing just right. When it all breaks down, seesaws nicely between catchy choruses, hazy psychedelia tinged verses and blasts of furious riffing, while Magpie is rad, its dirty metal snarl and shimmering guitars in the chorus making for an easy instant standout. But yeah, a handful of good tracks don't compensate for the tedious slog that is the record's second half. Torpedo ultimately leaves one damning question bouncing around my head. Is this the weakest Feeder record? I'll stop short of answering that, but it's certainly in the conversation. 2 stars. Next up we have Costello Music by the Fratellis from 2006, which was the band's debut LP. And hey you guys, what we have here is a pretty obvious reactionary record. I don't think it's a coincidence that in January 2006 the Arctic Monkeys stormed up the charts with Whatever You Say I Am, That's What I'm Not, and a scant 5 months later, here the Fratellis are with a dollar store rip-off version of it. Okay, perhaps that's not entirely fair. While John Fratelli can't match Alex Turner's lyrical output, the band do certainly have a way with a bright sparkly melody. And this leads to a clutch of seriously catchy bangers scattered throughout the tracklist. That said, this LP is far from perfect. For me, there is something amiss here, despite the record regularly throwing up great tunes. It doesn't quite coalesce into a satisfying whole. It's hard to put my finger on exactly why that is. Perhaps it's the way that the guitar tone doesn't really vary much across this album, or maybe the way that the fast-paced vocals get a bit repetitive, or maybe how certain later tracks seem like watered-down versions of previous tunes on the LP. Whatever the case, I do find myself feeling quite tired of the record by the time it reaches its conclusion. I mean, when the last track rolls around and my general feeling is, oh, thank God for that, we're done. Something somewhere has gone slightly wrong. And it is weird, because as I said, there are plenty of excellent highlights here. Whistle for the Choir is a lovely ballad with a nice clean 1960s pre-Beatles feel and a catchy yet melancholic melody. The band's biggest hit, Chelsea Dagger, has a nice dramatic marching element to it and is an immediate bit of bouncing fun. For the Girl is yet more in the way of huge bright melodic pop that sounds like summer has come back around. It makes me want to go to the sea, stick on a pair of Speedos and suggestively lick a Mr. Whippy while staring daggers at that git that barred me permanently from the Promenade's video arcade. Everybody Knows You Cried Last Night is fantastic with its wiry guitars and skyscraping car-style power pop vocal lines, while Baby Fratelli is a fun homage to 1970s glam, its super catchy chorus blasting you straight back to the heyday of Wizard and Slade. But still, these great tunes can't quite overcome the issues that I have with the record. Those combined with some blustery filler tracks such as Dog in a Bag, Creeping Up the Backstairs and Got My Nups from a Hippie leave this LP as something that I'd like to cherry pick from and add to a playlist rather than something I'd like to sit down and listen to all the way through. And for me, that's never really a good look for a record. So, despite some real standout tunes, for this I can only go to 3 stars. Next up we have Foxhead Stalked This Land by Close Lobsters from 1987, which was the band's debut LP. And yeah, Close who? Close Lobsters? What the fuck? I mean, I've come across some weird band names in my time, but Close Lobsters might take the biscuit. Or should that be the bisque? Thank you very much, I'll be here all week. And here we have a delightful 1980s jangle album that feels like a close bedfellow to bands such as The Smiths, R.E.M. and Felt, the latter of which making sense as Felt and Close Lobsters shared the same indie label, Cherry Red Records. And you know the drill when it comes to 1980s jangle records, lots of sparkly, upbeat sounding guitar work, genial twee soundscapes and downbeat lyrics hiding behind it all. And Close Lobsters are exactly that, they fit the template of the genre to a T, which is where we find the band's one true downfall. This is a very pleasant and catchy LP, but there's nothing on this that we haven't heard like a million times before. And this becomes a minor issue on the back end of the record when typical throwaway jangly fluff like In Spite of These Times, I Take Bribes and Pimps start rounding out the filler portion of the album. They're not bad songs per se, in fact they're perfectly pleasant, but they're just such cookie cutter jangle tunes that they basically evaporate from existence the moment they finish. But thankfully when this LP is on form it really does hit that jangle pop sweet spot. Highlights include Sewer Pipe Dream, which is fantastic with its instantly catchy peak IRS era REM stylings. I Kiss the Flowers in Bloom has a gorgeous dream pop march and a super catchy sing-along refrain that basically gets on its knees and begs you to join in. A Prophecy is a beautiful ballad, its jangly autumnal soundscape bringing a subtle melancholia with it. Title track Foxheads has a bizarre yet incredibly catchy chorus. But come on now, like what the fuck are Foxheads and why are they stalking this land? The track's lyrics talk of satellites doing loop-the-loops and throwing boomerangs, so I guess the answer is drugs? Like lots and lots of drugs? Opener Just Too Bloody Stupid kicks the record off as it means to go on, with a bouncing upbeat jangle rocker that has definite elements of Felt about it, while closer Mother of God has a frisson of The Cure's Push threaded through, its epic pulsing composition and gnarly climactic three-count having stadium rock catharsis stamped all over it. So yeah, while this record isn't particularly revelatory or original, it still ticks those rock-solid jangle pop boxes and entertains throughout its runtime with soundscapes that are pretty hard to dislike. 4 stars. So, taking home the Chuchu Reviews gold medal this week, we have number 4 by Stone Temple Pilots from 1999, which, wouldn't you know it, was the band's 4th LP. And this album is part of the whole post-Nirvana American heavy rock scene that birthed grimy, dark, aggression-filled acts such as Alice in Chains and Rage Against the Machine, and eventually evolved into the rather horrific genre of nu metal, which lamentably gave us utter pap like Limp Bizkit. And as I've said on this channel a few times in the past, that whole movement is one of my least favourites in all of rock. I've never liked Alice in Chains or Limp Bizkit or Linkin Park or Nickelback or any of that shite, it's just not my cup of tea. That said, this album rules, which is a very surprising turn of affairs for me personally. I really didn't expect to like this, but I absolutely do. I think a big part of that reason is that this record represents Stone Temple Pilots trying to actively break out of that grimy hard rock genre, infusing their tunes with more melody and alt rock elements. Of course, that grinding metal aspect still remains on a couple of tracks such as Down, Heaven and Hot Rods and No Way Out, which are the type of nasty, dark, grimy rock tunes that Feeder were aiming for yet missing. But Stone Temple Pilots do it much better and more convincingly. And seeming as those kind of tracks are the exception here rather than the rule, they also don't irk me, instead providing an occasional snarl-flashing thrill. But by the time you get to the band's biggest hit, Sour Girl, which is fantastic with its giant radio-friendly chorus, you're on a different, more pop-orientated ground altogether. Other highlights include Pruno, with its touches of lighter alt-rock. Church on Sunday is great with its wobbly yet unforgettably catchy chorus. The laughably misogynistic Sex and Violence has a thumping whiplash pace and is a lot of dumb trailer trash fun. Glide has a gorgeous hazy psychedelia to it that again totally cucks Feeder by doing exactly what they were trying to do, only much better. What Atlanta is a beautifully swirling ballad with a more acoustic lilt and some tastefully done string additions. So yeah, colour me surprised on this one. Number 4 by Stone Temple Pilots doesn't have a weak spot on its entire track list. It's a pretty badass modern heavy rock record and certainly one of the better albums I've heard from a genre that I don't really like. 4.5 stars. And that's another episode of Chuchu Reviews in the bag. Of course, I know that you'd rank these records differently, so why not sound off in the comments and tell me which one would win for you? And maybe drop a nomination while you're there. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe and all that other kind of YouTube jazz. Make sure to take care of yourself, but most importantly, just keep on ranking.